Good afternoon or good evening. Welcome to this month's Sound Money Hour. My name is Martin Spranger. I'm a senior strategy specialist here at Zang International. I'm filling in tonight for Lynette Zang as she travels home from a speaking event this weekend and, of course, last week. And we can talk about that with Florida State Representative Ryan Chamberlain, that will be also joining us today. Joining us is Daniel Diaz. He is the Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money. Director of Strategic Relations at Goldback, Kim Coleman. She's been on a couple of the other calls. She will not be joining today. And then, of course, Florida State Representative Ryan Chamberlain. Thank you both for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to start quickly with a recap, and then we'll make a proper introduction for Representative Ryan Chamberlain. So for those of you who have been watching the Sound Money Hour, we wanted to put these together to train you on how to be an advocate for sound money, how to successfully organize and lobby for legislation that will push for sound money principles. So in the first part that we did, the first video, we kind of discussed the basics, generally how legislation is passed, what some of the key things you should do and shouldn't do. And then the second episode, which you can go back in the previous videos and rewatch, we got a little more deeper into some of the things that happen, the structure of different legislatures around the country. What's the leadership's role, and some homework for you guys that we gave you to reach out to legislators and introduce yourselves. So this video that we're going to be doing now is to give you a perspective from the other side. We gave you a perspective from citizen lobbyists and actual lobbyists in the sound money movement. Now we're going to have Representative Chamberlain give some feedback from the other side as a legislature for all of you. So that's just a recap for the last two videos. And Martin, if you want to take it from there.
Absolutely. Welcome, Representative Chamberlain. I'd like to talk a little bit about your legislative journey. Maybe one of the questions that others would be interested in is, first of all, what motivated you to run for office?
Well, thanks for having me on. You know, I've always had an interest in politics since I was a kid. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a little bit of a political home. My dad served a couple of terms in the Georgia House, so I grew up as a little young guy, first, second grade, traveling up to the Capitol to see my dad. So you could say I grew up around it. In the 80s, we watched a lot of news at the house. And so I developed an interest because that's the kind of conversations I had at an early age. I became an entrepreneur right out of high school. And from about, let's just say 20 years old to 25 years straight, built businesses and did things really in a fun way. I love being an entrepreneur. I love now serving entrepreneurs. But 7 years ago, I had an opportunity to basically move out of a business that I had invested in for over a decade. It freed me up, and at the same time, I was asked to run for political office. And I took a little time. I didn't rush to answer that calling right away, but I dug in and really made a serious decision to give it a shot, and I went all in and lost. I lost my first political race, so I know what it's like to raise a lot of money, get out there and campaign, and knock thousands and thousands of doors and still not be able to win. So for those of you that are listening, just know that you can come back again. And I did a few years later. And this next time when the Florida House seat opened up, I was able to jump right in. And I learned a lot from the first race that I applied to the second race. And we certainly were victorious. I'm now in my third election cycle and loving every minute of it. You know, that doesn't mean there's not frustrations. That doesn't mean that there's not challenges. But, you know, being a part of something like this where you can really go to work to help a lot of people is really a blessing. It's a lot of fun. And this topic is something I'm very interested in and was before, but not only before I was elected, but the whole time I've been elected. I've paid attention to it. I've worked with the sponsors of the different bills and been learning more and more excited about where we're going. So that's a little bit of the journey. I can go whatever direction you want, but that brings us up to where we're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say surprised you the most after becoming a legislator?
How many of my friends all of a sudden were political experts?
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
You know, it's funny. Once you become elected, then everyone wants to tell you how to do it all, and that's kind of a funny thing. But the reality is, you really become a person that people feel like they can now they have the right to talk to you about all the things that have been on their mind politically. And so I've become more and more aware that a lot of what, you know, I didn't used to talk to everybody about is on people's minds. And there's
Mm,
a lot of, people pay attention to the news. The news only gives them, 10% of what's really going on. So there's a lot of very educated, smart people that they don't know all the things that are really happening behind the scenes. So I became a lot more aware of that after I was elected than before I was elected.
yeah, excellent. And just a little bit of background before we move on with the questions. I remember when you first got elected, I think it was the first year we were pushing the sound money legislation. You were actually interested in sponsoring it. You are a sound money advocate. You worked in the sound money space for a little bit. So, I remember you gave deference to Representative Doug Banks, and you're like, if Doug doesn't want it, you're like, I'll take it. So that's I think a testament to one. Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
yeah,
100%. I was, and then when I knew he wanted to do it, of course, I offered to support, and he already had a prime co-sponsor, so I couldn't even do that. I lobbied for that, but I did co-sponsor the bill, and something Doug and I uh, enjoy talking about the journey of this bill and what's going on in the state of Florida. And now, I still engage in conversations in and outside of Florida about what's happening in Florida
yeah,
regarding this bill. I don't know all the ins and outs maybe the way you do. There's a lot of nuances to it because when you're in session, your brain is on. It can potentially be on several hundred bills during a very short period of time. And because I wasn't the main sponsor of it, I certainly Doug Rep Bankson is the expert on this particular topic, but I love where it's going and I love the highlights and what we're doing here in Florida.
yeah. That's a great segue to the next question. What are some misconceptions that citizens have about serving in the legislature?
Well, there is no such thing as a effective part-time legislator. And I'm not, picking on any of my colleagues because I think most of them would agree. This job is labeled or was labeled decades ago as a part-time job. However, the size of Florida, we're a $1.8 trillion economy. Each legislator has roughly close to 200,000 constituents that's in their region. They divide up the state every 10 years. There's roughly, 20 something million people divided by 120. And so all of us have this, the same grouping of people, so to speak. But then during the course of that 10 years, some areas grow faster than others. I'm in one of the fastest growing counties and districts in the entire state, Marion County. So I think that people think that they're going to get elected and it's just going to, things are going to happen by osmosis. Well, it really doesn't. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of education involved in it. And there's just a lot of, you'd be surprised also once you're elected how much of everything everyone does agree on. And it's usually the 10 or 20% that people are arguing about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and go ahead,
Sorry.
Martin.
I actually have a question. It has to do with a typical legislative week, what that might actually look like, Representative Chamberlain. But more to bring it down to what we're doing, what did this process look like that you were involved in, finally getting it passed and through the Florida legislature? And, time frame, a year, 2 years, months, how did that work?
Good question. And I will say this: most great pieces of legislation take more than one session. So it's not uncommon for a bill like this to be presented one year, it not quite make it all the way through, and then the next year you pick up where you left off because you only have roughly a 60-day window and I'll explain it to you as you ask the first part of your question, how that really works, what that legislative week or months look like. But technically, in the Florida Constitution, we have a 60-day period per year that we're obligated to be in Tallahassee to handle legislation. Leading up to that, there's about 2 or 3 months worth of what they call committee weeks, where you're assigned to, each legislator has about 5 or 6 committees they're assigned to, and they attend a few months, usually one committee meeting per week for, let's say, a couple of months. And what those committees are designed to do is to hear all the bills that are going to be coming during the 60-day session, but to really weed them out. Some bills don't even get heard, and if they don't get heard at least a few times during the committee weeks, they pretty much have a zero chance of making it. They need to get heard during committees, and sometimes after session begins, we still have a few more weeks worth of committees. But bills need to go through a committee process first before they can ever get to the House floor. So depending on which part of the 60 days, once we're actually in session, the first 30 days of that is us getting pretty aggressive in the committees. We're having multiple committee meetings each week, the first 3 or 4 weeks. We also have a lot of lobbyists, a lot of activists, a lot of constituents that come to visit, setting appointments. And I know on my own, I try to take as many of those appointments as I possibly can. Sometimes it could be 10 appointments in a day, 5 in a day, 15 in a day on a really tight day. Plus there's events and parties, or whatever you want to call them, things that are going on throughout the midst of all this, depending on the celebration or the activism that's taking place. So it's really busy. A year's worth of work is crammed into about 2 months. You don't go up there during the 2 months. There's not a whole lot of relaxing that's happening. Usually the second 30-day period of the 60 days, we're in the chamber a lot now, voting on bills that have made it through the committee process. And remember, all this is happening on the Senate side of the House as well. You have to make it through the Senate committees, and then the Senate floor, the House committees, and the House floor before it could ever even get to the governor's desk. And then even after that, the governor can veto after all that work has gone if he just didn't like something, or he says, hey, bring it back next year and tweak this and I'll pass it. Different things the governor might say, whether he likes or doesn't like a bill. So that's somewhat of the process and somewhat of a week that a legislator would have during this session. So we basically live in Tallahassee about 3 months total a year. The rest of the time is around the state, in our hometowns, and then whatever events and things we're doing and meetings. We have offices in our hometowns and in Tallahassee as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
And the next set of questions is titled, "What makes an effective citizen advocate?" Before we get to the first question, based on the last question, legislators can only be an expert. We've talked about this in previous episode. Can only be an expert in like the area that they have an expertise. And the way we described it is there's maybe 1,000 bills, and the knowledge of the legislature on all those bills is about 1 inch deep, but it's a mile wide, except for those issues where they are experts, and now it's a mile deep on their understanding of it. Just give a little bit of background to the legislators, like who do you guys depend on for information on all the other pieces of legislation?
Well, it's a great question. One, we depend on other legislators. For example, if I have a question about, precious metals, I'm probably in legislation, I'm probably going to call Doug Bankston, right? I want to make sure I'm thinking about it. I know a little bit about the topic, very much enjoy the topic, and maybe know more than most. But who is if it's an insurance issue, who's my insurance guy? If it's we could go through this, a contracting issue, who's my contractor that's also now a House member that understands how to think about this. So I think those are kind of gimmies. If we have somebody in the House that that we know, like, trust, we just understand, we're probably going to talk to them as well. We're then going to align ourselves with what I would say credible experts, associations, people that have an interest in and willing to come to the Capitol and or come visit with us. And we'll say people that, handle themselves in a professional way, people that you could tell they know what they're talking about. They're not just there looking for some unique angle to benefit them personally. They're really they've got something that can be in best interest of a lot of people. So you start to, it takes a little bit of time. I'm now in my fourth year, going into fourth session. So first few sessions, you're trying to figure out who is it that you can listen to? Who is it you should listen to? Because not everybody tells you everything you need to be hearing. So even if you have somebody you really like and you really get a lot of good information, having somebody else to bounce it off of before you start working on putting things into law is probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great segue into the next set of questions. Like, what makes a constituent stand out in a positive way?
Well, one, in the positive way is when they communicate positively. When somebody comes in there and it's all about, everybody's doing everything wrong, even if they are, if they're coming in your door and they're bringing a negative vibe and they're out to get everybody, they may have a good point or two, but there's a lot of resistance because that a legislator, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody. I know for myself, you gotta really question what's the motives behind here when somebody's coming in that mad, that negative. So what stands out to me is someone, they're very polite, they're very respectful. They have a problem they would like to talk about, but they've also thought through some solutions, not just bringing problems to the table. And they communicate, they listen. They're not just there to talk, they're there to actually communicate. Then and they have a game plan. Maybe they put some work into it. If they really have some knowledge and you can tell they have knowledge, they become somebody that I think most legislators, okay, this person's going to be somebody I'm going to want to communicate with. And it's hard to describe that in a very short podcast like this, but hopefully people are understanding it. The way people receive you in anything in life is either going to create a welcoming effect or a resistance effect. So to me, it's not very sharp, not very wise to come in attacking, even though you may have a solution for a big problem. You've got to come in and build a relationship, and that only comes through proper communication.
Relationship is key. We keep hammering that in every episode.
Yeah.
Martin?
Sure. Well, I think he answered the second question. What is the biggest mistake a lobbyist can make? And that's coming in with all the answers and potentially negative. So I'm going to skip to the next one. Actually, I asked two at the same time. Does one thoughtful constituent meeting matter? And how important, I've always wondered about this, Representative. So how important are phone calls, emails, and handwritten letters? Your opinion, please.
Yeah, no, I think a thoughtful constituent meeting matters. I guess we'd have to define what thoughtful meant, but the reality is it does matter. I have, passed bills each cycle that I have been a part of the House, and many of the bills that I've filed have started with constituent meetings, meaning constituent brought something to the table that it became very obvious very quickly to me that this is something that would help a lot of people if we fixed it. If it's just a unique situation, I usually have to redirect the energy. But I believe that's the only way we some of the best bills and the most passionate bills that are filed on behalf of constituents. So I'd have to say that's important. Mass emails, copy and paste, things that don't look like they're personalized emails tend to not work very well.
Okay.
Short, concise, respectful emails, bringing up clear points We read them. Myself and my team read emails, but there's technology things out there that allow people just to go copy and blast it up. You can tell when that's happening, and that to me, even though some of the information I do want to pay attention to it, like even if we have those automated emails, if a bunch of them are coming in, I'll get briefed on what's coming in. But my rule of thumb is, if somebody won't take the time to type it, why should I take the time to read it? That's kind of a harsh rule of thumb, but I'm not that interested in somebody just sending me something somebody else wrote, unless they preface it and they have internalized it and personalized it. That's my opinion. That may not be every other legislator, but we get so much correspondence. We almost have to allow the stuff that is serious to rise to the top, because there's only so much we can process.
Phone calls and handwritten letters?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Handwritten letters. We don't get a lot of those. We get some of those. Most of the handwritten letters we get are thank you letters, usually. Or I guess we do get a few not thank you letters, which would be the mean ones. We get some of they're not thanking us for something. Phone calls, we do take phone calls as well. I think most people, when you recognize the idea that a legislator that's serving a county and a state potentially has a ton of calls that he or she is dealing with. So sometimes it is hard to return them all in a timely manner as a legislator. So that's why you have an office and a staff and a team to help with it. So I don't want anybody ever taking it personal, like their stuff doesn't matter. Sometimes it's a bandwidth thing. Again, it's not an excuse. It's just the nature of the business. But phone calls are good. If you want to set a meeting, like I've told my staff this past week, I've had a few people that want to come in and just talk to me about bill ideas, and I love doing meetings, but I'm at the point where, hey, if they've taken the time to call my office or send in my office a personal email, they'd like to talk about something, but they really don't have a game plan. A lot of times I will request a phone meeting first. Let me do a 10-minute phone call. Let's talk a little bit. And then let's decide if you need to bring in or come have a physical meeting. So I think it all matters when it's done the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, how can someone build credibility with their elected officials over time? What would you say is the best method? Last episode, we said right now, because it is primary season, go ahead and start volunteering for your candidate or your incumbent. Build a relationship there first. And if it's after election season, just build a relationship with your local representative. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, during the campaign season, anyone that volunteers and shows up or asks to help, that is a quick way to get noticed, because it's surprisingly not that many people do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to stand out in the business world, I do a lot of advisory work now. When I'm working with companies, we look at, okay, what's the competition not willing to do? What are they not doing? Well, if you really want to be known, you're going to have to stand out some way. That's one way to do it. And so I think that's prime on. That is probably the number one way. Some sort of volunteer, some sort of getting involved, showing up to events, even if it's just to support. If your legislator is speaking at an event, or like I was speaking at a July 3rd or July 4th rally, showing up, walking up, the crowds usually aren't that big for state legislators. It's usually in the hundreds or less. It's not in the thousands most of the time. Introducing yourself, getting your picture, you've got to get known. Back to what you said earlier, it's about relationship. Relationship sometimes is developed out of frequency or these kind of things. I mean, there's a lot of political work that can be done voluntarily that really makes a big difference. And so that's where I would start as well, especially in this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin?
represent the legislative staff play in the process? And I think we know this, but how should citizens treat the staff members? And I kind of equate it to, they've always said in sales, you always have to get behind the receptionist or the secretary. Is that the same thing that goes on with the legislative representatives? We have to get through the
Yeah,
staff.
First of all, most legislators can't really do their job as effectively without their staff. I mean, they just can't. We have to have help. They are the first line to a lot of the constituent work, and sometimes, as a legislator, if my staff does something wrong, I get blamed for it. I don't blame it on my staff. That would be I'm the boss from that standpoint. I will say this: if people treat my staff wrong, I usually don't take the meeting.
Yeah. What would be
If
wrong?
that's the first,
What's-
if that's the first, yeah, I mean, if they're really brash, if they're, because some people, they just feel like they gotta bulldoze their way in, and like the person they're talking to get to me isn't important. And the problem with that is I think they're important. And if I think they're important and that relationship's getting abused, then I feel like that I'm just welcoming that kind of abuse into my office. So it's just not wise. That's not the way things work. I don't see how anybody's successful in anything treating the gatekeeper bad. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you do that in the political process and think that it works? So my staff, I have to have them. They between the research, between the amount of bills, between the scheduling, all the things that go involved, the note taking, when a meeting is done, usually there's a list of tasks that are done, and my staff is helping pull all that together. Because remember, this is a part-time job for legislators, so we need our staff. No, I'm kidding. But you get the idea of it. It's an important piece. So I think if you're a constituent wanting to get to your representative, probably the nicer you are to their staff, the more likely you are to get a meeting.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, we keep saying that as well. All right, so the next set of questions is inside the legislative process. And the first question is, how does a bill gain momentum?
Well, it gains momentum when it's simple, it's been simplified, it's easy to communicate, it solves a problem that is a real problem, and you have it being heard in at least one committee on the House and one committee on the Senate. To me, until it's heard in a committee, there's not a lot of momentum that you can't get liftoff.
Yeah.
Once it's reached two committees on each side, now you've got a conversation that everybody can see this bill has a path, a little bit more energy. If there's associations or lobbyists involved in helping move the bill, they start to get, a little bit of energy, a little bit excited. But by that time, you've also, because you've gone through the committee process, you've had people either speak out against it, speak for it. You've learned how to tighten what you're saying to answer the questions. And I think that the legislators they get a little bit more involved. When you have the blessing of the Speaker of the House or the Senate president, and you're just having to work it through the committee process, you're going to feel some momentum. And so I think that sometimes people get worried about bills that aren't going anywhere. Like they're all distraught because somebody filed a bill and that bill never got heard because nobody else liked it either. Don't worry about that. I mean, you got to pay attention to it, but don't overreact to it. Don't spend a lot of energy fighting something that has zero movement to it. Work on rolling up your sleeves and helping the ones that do have some momentum. And so last piece I'll say to this is, if you have a group of activists, advocates that see a bill that they really like and they believe in it, having them communicate properly to the legislators that are in the committees with the right enthusiasm and what they believe in, it will help. It will help further that momentum.
And to follow up on that, we discussed this in the last episode, that what they want to do after the bill is filed, after they find a sponsor, is to wait for the bill to be assigned to committee and then target the committee members and lobby with their talking points that we train them on, and specifically the committee chair. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with it. I think that, when we say target, that doesn't mean hound.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that, and I don't mean that to be harsh, but I think that if there's a real plan here, and back to the things we said earlier, the communication is respectful, and you're setting legit appointments, and you coming in there and you know exactly what you're coming in to talk about. You're gonna do good. You're gonna do good. It's gonna help get things, on the radar the way that it needs to be. And so, yeah, I think you're teaching the right stuff.
All right, awesome. Martin?
What happens to a bill after it's filed that most citizens never see?
What happens to a bill after it's filed that most citizens never see? I would say most citizens don't see the conversations that are happening in the lunchroom at the Capitol to try to get that bill to where the chairman of the committee will say, yes, I'll hear the bill.
Yeah.
They don't understand that there is, again, relationships. Everything I'm saying on this call, by the way, it also applies to legislators, because there's good legislators and there's ones that aren't so good. And the good ones are relationship builders. And if the legislator starts pitching the bill idea and starts getting resistance, what a lot of the constituents don't see is that legislator has to either decide right then and there, yeah, this bill is not ready this year, or let me come back to the drawing table and fix some things so that I won't get the resistance and we can move through. But I think that comes out of the conversations that are happening early on before it's getting into committees, and the type of meetings that have to happen from a legislator to actually get it to be heard that first few times. So it's a pretty interesting process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of hinted on that, but I really hammer the first two episodes the importance of leadership and committee chairs. What is the role that you can explain to the citizens of the committee chairs and leadership when it comes to legislation?
Well, leadership certainly sets the agenda for what they're wanting. They're leaders. They have an idea of what they want to accomplish that session. Doesn't mean they won't look at everything, but they have their core buckets of things that they're trying to accomplish as their goals, because leadership generally is in their 7th and 8th year. They're in their last few years of having already served, so they've learned a lot in that first 6 years to get to where they're at. And so certainly having them, the type of bill that you're running contradicting another goal they have is probably not wise unless you're just trying to get the conversation going. And sometimes you file bills even if you know, hey, it's probably not going to pass this year, but I got to get this thing moving and it may take me a few years. So now's a year to do it. As far as the chair of those committees, their importance, I mean, listen, if a chair of a committee decides that they're just not interested in the bill you have, it ain't going nowhere. So they really are a gatekeeper to what happens. And so how they're communicated with, but really the power that they have is remarkable when it comes, and it changes every session. Things change, so it's a moving, breathing machine. And sometimes you get a chair that just doesn't like that type of a bill, and unfortunately it's part of the process. It means you may not get it moved that year. You might have to bring it back the next year.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
Martin?
Well, you may have answered this question, but what makes legislatures decide to co-sponsor legislation? It just may be timing, or could be something that, doesn't match with what your agenda is. Maybe you can add clarity on that.
You broke up on the first part. So the first part of the question was,
what makes legislatures decide to co-sponsor legislation?
I mean, usually it's usually, I know for me, as I'm hearing bills being said, if a bill resonates with something that I like to have regular conversations about, I believe in, and I want to add a little weight to it, I co-sponsor it, and I think most people do that. I mean, there's some real core conservative issues that if occasionally there's bills that everybody co-sponsors because this is a core issue that we all want to get behind, and we want our name to be on the bill because we want our constituency back home to know this is the type of thing that we're up here fighting for. And I think that it does matter. It does matter what you co-sponsor. Sometimes you co-sponsor and you get more involved in helping push the bill. Sometimes you co-sponsor after it's almost done because you
Mhm.
now like the version of where they ended up. You didn't like where it started, but you like where it ended up. And so
I didn't
it
have
all plays a role. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have a chance to research. Were you a sponsor or a co-sponsor of the Sound Money movement in Florida?
A co-sponsor. I was a
Co-sponsor.
co-sponsor.
Okay. All right. What was it
Yeah.
that brought
So yeah,
you?
Doug Bankson took the sponsorship role.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Representative Chamberlain lobbied to be the sponsor, but it was already taken with Representative Bankson.
Perfect.
The next question is, and I talk about this a lot. How much influence do citizens really have compared to paid lobbyists, trade associations, industry experts?
Well, I've met citizens that have more influence with me than paid lobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
Because some citizens know more about the topic and they've worked harder than what the paid lobbyists has worked. So I have to, as a legislator, I have to be very wise with who I decide to listen to. Because lobbyists are paid to tell me what they're paid to tell me. And oftentimes, if a lobbyist comes in and they're really giving me a hard pitch on why I should roll with the piece of legislation, um, after I listen to everything, I really have to go to work to find out, okay, who's not going to like this bill and why are they not going to like it? Because there's always going to be somebody that generally doesn't like the bill, and sometimes the lobbyist isn't going to tell me that. So understand it's more about the experience, the wisdom, the expertise than it is whether you're paid or whether you're volunteer. And some of my favorite bills that we've ran through the House were not paid lobbyist bills. I'm not again. I mean, I understand there's a role because there's some really good lobbyists. There's a role for lobbying. I used to be a little bit more anti-lobby. After I understood and got to meet the lobbyists, I realized there are some good ones. There's some that are more frustrating than others, but there's some that people really love their job. They're experienced at it and they're fighting for the right things the right way. But there's some constituents that have great ideas that can move the needle, that can help make history without ever being considered a lobbyist if they're working hard and they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we say that all the time that if you keep it short, you keep it succinct, and you're informative, you can have more impact than a paid lobbyist, and that's why we're doing these courses, which is a great transition to the next set of questions. Conducting a successful legislative meeting. So we want to walk through a hypothetical meeting with you where a citizen wants to meet with you, Representative Chamberlain, to support a sound money bill. What would you say is a good opening? What is information that is actually useful?
So first of all, if what's information that's useful, certainly if they're approaching me and they don't believe I know anything about the topic at all,
Mm-hmm.
then I think there's some basic, hopefully, and I'm sure you guys have put this together, but there's a basic summary of here's the issue, here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's why we think it'll be great for the state of Florida. And I think that there has to be that initial short, way to communicate, elevator pitch, so to speak, has to be developed.
Like the problem and the solution.
That's it. Problem and
Yeah.
solution, and a little bit of, here's what we've started doing. Here's some of the support, maybe some of the credentials. Here's who we're working with, if there are people we're working with. And we got to get that stuff out quick to get the legislators' attention, because remember, they're hearing hundreds of bills. They're trying to figure out, even though yours might be the best in the world, if it's not communicated properly, it'll be too hard to process in too short period of time. So I think the first meeting needs to be concise. This is the way I would probably frame it. And again, I haven't prepared for necessarily you were just asking off the cuff questions. I would pretend that I'm going to a legislator's office. I've got 5 minutes. What are the 5 things that I want him to, or her to remember? What are the top 5 things? And I would not walk into that meeting without those 5 key things that I'm going to make sure, because these 5 things, if they understand them quickly, then I'll stand a chance to get a second meeting. Because again, right out of the gate, you might need a couple of meetings, or you might be working with their staff to get more information, or to set an appointment with you as a constituent. Sometimes your job is to get in there, break the ice, and get an appointment set with somebody that has a whole lot more knowledge, that you're kind of helping create a filtering process so that you can help the more knowledgeable people, pass the baton to them to help them kind of close the deal, so to speak,
Yeah.
in terms of sales. So that's the way I would think about it. One of the, a legislator's only going to remember 3 to 5 things anyway, no matter how long the meeting is.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well go in there knowing what the 3 to 5 things are that you want them to know and how you want them to know it, and figure out the most concise way to communicate that. And let me say this, if you don't get their attention, then you might not ever be able to get their attention. They may not be the right legislator for you to be working with or pushing with your time, because you only have so much time as a constituent. There may be other legislators you have to get on the bandwagon, and then come back to them and say, hey, we've got all these legislators. Then all of a sudden they're interested. And so there's a lot of strategies. Don't wear yourself out with any one legislator, that's for sure.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up with a question that's pertinent to what we
Yeah.
just asked from audience member. Miss Libertarian asked, because earlier on you said come in with a positive attitude. So her question is, what is the best way to point out flaws or unintended consequences to a bill already in motion?
That's a good point. Well, one, you can communicate something negative in a positive way. And so, generally speaking, if you're communicating to a legislator that you don't know, you might ask them that question. Just say, listen, I'd love to talk to you about a bill that's going to be on your radar. There's some good points about the bill, but there's a couple of things I just want to bring your attention. Can we spend a few minutes? And again, here's what happens sometimes is people want to come in and spend 30 minutes talking about all the negatives, and it really could have been covered in about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 3 or 4 things. So I think it's being concise. I think it's your approach and your tone that is, you can point out stuff that needs to be fixed without being mean about it. And it doesn't sound like you're a mean person, or you wouldn't be on here asking the question as a guest. But I think that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Because listen, I'm a nice guy, but if we have to talk serious about something that's going to hurt somebody, we're going to have to talk serious, but it's not going to be like me just throwing stuff at somebody I don't know and I've never met,
mm-hmm.
without a relationship.
Right. Exactly. And a follow-up to in the same point from Miramar is like, what are steps we citizens can take to adjust the bill that just passed? So the bills are already law. We have next legislative session. How would you recommend citizens bring up bills that have those unintended consequences that are already law?
A couple of things. One, have your ideas be able to explain very quickly why you'd like to change this, what the unintended consequences are. That's a term we hear about a lot. People come visit me and say, hey, Rep, because they know I'm not an expert on everything. Hey, here's an unintended consequence. We need you to think about this. But the most powerful, when someone does bring up a correction or an amendment idea, like, hey, Rep, would you consider adjusting your legislation before it gets to the next committee? Because this is who it will hurt. If they use those kind of words, because I don't want to hurt anybody, they'll get my attention. I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm going to pay attention to them. Like, this is who this would hurt if we didn't make some of these adjustments. Here's who it'll help way more if we do make these adjustments. They've got my attention. But also, if they have an association that they're working with, or if they have a movement that they're working with, them having some resource that helps, confirm that this isn't just a problem they're fixing for their personal self. This is a problem that could have a million people. Again, we're talking about a topic like this. Any adjustment we make to a bill regarding sound money potentially affects millions of people because of the way that it works. So it's got to be taken that serious.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, when should the citizen make the ask? We tell them to have an ask to either, would you be able to sponsor? Would you co-sponsor? At what point during the meeting should they make that ask?
Well, so a couple of things. One, during an election year, most legislators, if they don't get reelected, they can't file any bills. So in my case, for example, I have a primary. I do not have a general. So after my primary is over in about 4 weeks, I'm going to start looking at legislation early. Otherwise, most of them may not, they might be jotting some ideas out, but I'd say as you get closer to November, the ones that look like they're going to definitely win their races, their brains will start, if they've been around for a while, unless they're brand new, they're probably already thinking about what bills am I bringing back or what's some ideas. I would not do it a year in advance. Although, again, if you're bumping into somebody and you're having a quick conversation, that's one thing. But I would probably set it sometime toward the end of the summer leading into the next session to try to have a first meeting. As you get closer to election time or shortly after, you really should have a few legislators that you've had conversations with already. You're not pressuring them, but the ones that have shown interest in what you're doing, ask them if they'll sponsor it. But if they like what you're doing and they say to you, listen, my spots are all full, go ahead and here's the next sentence. Could you help me find a legislator that would sponsor it? Because chances are they know someone that's like-minded that would help you and connect you. And there are legislators sometimes that are looking, that don't have all their spots filled. I have people coming up to me asking me all the time, hey, you know any good bills I could run this year? That, especially the longer I'm in, the more seasoned I get, people will ask that question more. So, that's how you work it. That's how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question in this section would be, what would make you think I'd like to work with this person again? What's something that stands out to us for a citizen lobbyist that makes you say, I like this guy, or he's sharp, he was kind. What are some of those things?
Well, I think personalities match personalities. I don't want anybody to take offense to this, but I think in the world we live in today, you match yourself. You try to spend more time with people that are in alignment with your likes and values. And so I tend to be able to have stronger conversations with fellow entrepreneurs, and what I'm saying is, if you're a constituent and you have a strong background in something, or you have that you're very similar to some of the things that other legislators like, try to line yourself up with people that you relate to. The more you relate to somebody, the better. I think that for me, am I able to communicate with the person? Is it a two-way conversation, or is it always a one-way? Two, do I feel like they're really going to work the bill, or they're just doing something somebody asked them to do? Are they really, how knowledgeable are they about it? How effective are they about it? And how do I feel about the particular bill? Sometimes people will bring me a bill and I like the person, but it's not the kind of bill I want to take a slot up with. But I know a friend of mine that loves that topic, they're going to match up with. So sometimes it's just not a match. And so I think in that case, like I say to people all the time, hey, there's certain people every year I'm asking, hey, what are you working on? What are you working on? Because I know if they bring me something I like, I don't want to run a bill I don't like, that I'm going to be able to work with them pretty well because of the way they communicate, the way they work. If I call them, I can get a hold of them. If I need help, they'll go do some legwork for me. And whoever brings me the bill, I rely on them quite a bit through the process to help me do things. They're not just handing it off and I go do all the work. No, we're in this thing together if we're getting this thing done. And so be ready to go to work if you're going to be out there asking legislators to take on bills that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Some people think, oh, I just follow the bill, the legislators will do everything. No, you need to put in the work, the sweat equity, so that you know as a legislator that you're not alone and these people are serious. So I 100% agree with that. Martin?
Yes, give me a moment here. Daniel, do you feel comfortable that he's already answered the questions that are next? What immediately turns you off during a meeting? Talking too much, being disrespectful? Okay, I don't want to rehash that. So we'll go on to, following up after a meeting with you, Representative. What should citizens do immediately after a meeting?
With me, what they do, well, it depends on how the meeting happened. I mean, I may give them a list of things. Hey, I need you to help me with this. Or you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how many first meetings I take on. And I say to them, hey, listen, I have these 3 things on my schedule. Could you come back with this information on this date? You reach out to the office when you're ready after August 1st or whatever, and let's sit back down. And then I never hear from them again. You'd be surprised.
Wow.
And I didn't tell them no. I just knew I wasn't, first of all, they didn't come with everything I needed. So I had a few things I needed them to gather for me because I had some interest. And again, I'll have my staff take notes. So if it's something like I'm trying to chase after, we will follow up. But I can kind of gauge how serious they are by whether or not they follow up with what we agreed to do at that meeting. So I think it's a case by case. It's a hard question to ask. I think that that would work for every single person. I think you have to be honest with yourself. Hey, did the meeting go well with the rep? Do you think, you have to ask yourself if you're coming in, did the rep really like the bill or was he just being nice to me? And sometimes people are just nice. They don't want to hurt you because you're doing something good by trying. No, I don't want to hurt anybody for trying. But at the same time, and sometimes people are nervous because they're coming to a elected official. I mean, we're just people, right? We just have a role that we play. So I think that case by case, what I would tell you is take good notes at the meeting you're at with the rep. Ask the rep, hey, is there anything, don't leave the meeting without attempting to set the next meeting. So if you had a meeting with a rep today, hey rep, how would you like me to work with you on this? Or when would you like me to follow up with your office to set the next appointment? And is there some additional information or anything I can do to help make more sense to you? You might even ask them, does this seem like something you would want to file or that you might want to help me find somebody else? Right. It's kind of sales 101. So you kind of take the pressure off of the rep into thinking he or she has to answer that. So if I were coming up with some sentences, that's probably one I would use. Like if somebody used that with me, I mean, it kind of boxes me into giving them an answer. If somebody says, hey rep, does this look like something you might file, or you would help me be able to find somebody that could file it, or you have no interest at all? I'd rather just know so I don't waste your time. if somebody said that to me, it's like, well, I am interested in the bill. And if I say I'm interested in the bill, then that's a green light for you
Yeah.
to say, Rep, okay, so when do you want me to follow back up with some more information? And I think that for those of you that are out there listening, wanting to help move things along, there is some people skills. There is some salesmanship involved in it. There is some communication technique. And if you want to get good at it, those are the things you have to learn and pay attention and listen to podcasts on if you need help in that area. Otherwise, it's the people that know how to communicate like that are going to seem to get it all done, and everybody else will be frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of already answered the second question. Should they send additional research? The third question is, how often should they follow up?
I think you got to be careful on this one. I think it needs to be, established at the meeting, because if I would say, if you had a meeting with me today and we set a date for the next meeting, you follow up. But I think if you're not hearing back from me on a regular basis, one of two things is happening. Number one, I'm getting loaded up with a bunch of requests and we're doing our best to get back to everybody. Two, maybe I didn't have that high of a level of interest and you have to figure it out. But I think at any legislator, if they're not responding after a couple of follow-ups from you, you may be spinning your plates, and it's better to have 3 or 4 or 5 legislators you're working with rather than just honing in on one and feeling like you've got to hammer this one or nothing's going to happen. And so I think that for me, if a legislator tells me to follow up with them next month, I'm following up. Okay, I'm making a note, I'm following up. If a legislator just says, hey, just get back with me in the next week or so, I'm probably going to be following up with them at least the next 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And if I don't hear from them after that, then I might say, hey, Rep, I realize this probably isn't for you. I don't want to bug you. I'm here for you if you want to get questions answered. We're gonna keep working it, and just kind of relieve yourself from the frustration and the tension of chasing somebody, because you don't want to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Martin?
Yeah. Wow. I just have so many questions, Representative. I was just in Florida. I know the law has just gone in place. How do you anticipate using it? Is it something that, first of all, my mind goes to, you were co-chair, co-sponsor of the bill. And what does it take? Did you already have a background or an understanding financially of what's going on to the financial system? And
Yeah,
want to get
no,
some money?
first of all, I had some involvement in it. I'm not an expert at it, but I did have a belief coming to the table of the value of sound money and the value of, and the idea of what, and really a little bit of the history of what happened to, fiat and money and what's happened to our economy and the idea of the government printing money and, what getting back on a gold standard, what all these kind of dialogue, all that dialogue was something I'd been paying attention to. And I had worked with some guys and in the space a little bit, started to understand it a little bit more. So when I heard about the bill, I was like, man, this is the way we need to go, whether the federal government goes this direction or not. The state being able to set their destiny with a bill like this is powerful. And now, that didn't mean I had all the answers to how it all is going to work. And you may not have all the answers of exactly how it's going to play out. I know having this as an option, it felt really good to me. It just something said, this is the right kind of bill. And then, so I'm giving you a little bit of history. At the beginning, I didn't know everything about the bill before I liked it. I liked the concepts of a bill like this. I think in the state of Florida now let's fast forward a few years. I've had some time to process it and think about it. I think us figuring out how to actually make it transactional, how to, answer the state's questions that need to be answered for depository, and you may have all these answers. I haven't been in the meetings yet for all of these. I know that there's some serious discussions for all of these issues and how the state should or shouldn't be involved in what's going to happen. But I think there's some companies right now and there's some organizations right now that are bringing some technology to the table that will, I already know of some that when the timing is right, I'm going to use what influence I have to try to set the right meetings with our state departments and our state to where we can actually get this to where we could actually have conduct transactions within the sound money world. And so we've got some legal things that we have overcome already from a law standpoint. Now getting it just because we can do it doesn't mean we're set up completely to do it the right way. Now there's some other implementation things that may take a few years to get right. We get it right, it'll make history again, Florida will be at the top of the game. So that's to all the knowledge. I'd love to come back in the next year working with Doug on, okay, what's the next level? Where are we going? What are some things we've got to do now on a state level to get everybody to sign off on it so that we can go gung-ho with this if somebody wants to choose this path. So that's where I'm at in my thinking with everything right now.
Fantastic. Daniel, I'll let you ask one more question or whatever you have to say, and then I'll wrap up. I think we're at the hour time, so I want to respect that for everybody.
No, absolutely. And I think this would be good for the audience to hear your perspective. If a legislator you already know is going to be against the piece of legislation or will disagree with you, should they take that meeting? And if so, how should they go about it?
That's a good question. I'm going to say I don't think they should. I don't think someone that is at a new, experienced level at trying to be an advocate for this space should be purposely taking meetings they know are not going to end up the way they wanted to end up. I think that there's, in most cases, if you feel like you have an idea and a piece of legislation that you're advocating for, that you think out of the 120 legislators, there's going to be 80 of them that love it and 40 of them that don't, just go focus on the 80.
Yeah.
Okay. If you think it's a really important piece of legislation and you think only 40 of them are going to like it and 80 of them are going to hate it, you need to go back to the drawing board because it's not going anywhere. Yeah. And so that just leads in a super majority kind of conservative, legislature like we have. If it's the right kind of conservative piece of legislation and it can't get the bulk of the conservatives' attention, we got to go back to the drawing board. A, what are we trying to accomplish? B, how are we communicating it? Because something's not translating from advocate to a legislator. And so I would say no. I'd say don't go to the ones are going to be negative meetings. Now, if you're able to have a conversation with someone and they're nice about it and you can learn something from it so that you can know, okay, what are people's objections with it? That may be a reason to take a meeting, but I would probably take that meeting with somebody that had a little bit more experience, just so you could go into the meeting knowing, hey, we're probably not going to go anywhere, but maybe we'll learn what the other side is saying so that we can, bulletproof ourselves for this going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great answer. Thank you.
Perfect. And by the way, I do that all the time. I do that all with my bills that I file. I go down and sit with people now that I know are not going to go with the bill. I just want to hear what they say. And sometimes they say stuff that makes sense to me and I have to think through, okay, do I need to adjust this? Or sometimes they confirm with me by being negative that I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and sometimes they throw out a good idea that makes me want to package what I'm saying differently so that it's received different. That's all.
Yeah. No, that's great. Martin?
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you both. Daniel, for bringing this, to us. And Representative Chamberlain, thank you for joining us, sharing your insights today. Hopefully the people that were listening got some really good tidbits or information on how to approach their representatives. There were a lot more questions that we had, but thank you so much for coming on today. And everybody that was watching, we encourage you to continue to stay informed, stay connected with your representatives, and continue to supporting sound money. I truly am a believer of it, as well as Lynette. Thank you so much. And then until next time, we'll meet with you again.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.